Welcome back. Don't know if you saw this week, but this was a report out of D.C. saying the U.S. consumer confidence this past month reached its highest point in nearly 7 years, boosted by strong job gains. As you see, the optimism suggesting that Americans will be likely to spend more in the months ahead. That is, of course, an important boost to the economy. Glad to have Binga Ajalore, Dr. Binga Ajalore, joining us from the University of Toledo Department of Economics once again here on the Roundtable. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
You bet. You see that report come through, and the reason I wanted to talk about this today is because there have been reports to the contrary, saying this is a false front and everybody should buckle down and get ready because another recession could be around the corner. What do you subscribe to? Do you think the former or the latter?
I would say both. That we're having a slow recovery and a lot of slow growth, but it's not hitting all the different sectors. So over the last couple of years, we've seen that we've had, GDP's been growing, but at low rates, like 1%, 2%. We've had wage growth in certain areas. Unemployment's been dropping down to 6.2%. But then you look at individuals, so look at wage growth, you say, okay, well, wages have been growing since 2007. But then you break it up by different sectors, different groups, the top 20% wage growth has been going up, the bottom 80% has been going down.
And that is something that is not going to fall on, I guess, kind ears to a lot of people who had hopes and dreams of this more even playing field as far as the economy is concerned and what we're looking at in this country. Everybody getting their share is what we've been hearing. But all indications right now, the economy is benefiting the top tier, and the lower tier is still the one struggling. You and I were discussing before we came out here today, you brought up a great analogy as far as looking at the economy, where it's been, where it's going. Talk about that 100 employees example.
Well, the reason why it's difficult to talk about how well the economy is doing is that analogy I was giving you, let's say you had this firm that had 100 employees, say in 2005, 2006. 2007, 2008, the economy collapses, and then that person still wants to maintain their business, so they lay off half their people. So now they have 50 people. 2009, 2010, they're still struggling, still trying to get on. And then things start to turn around. The economy starts doing well, so now their business is doing well. So they decide to hire some people, so they hire 20 people. Now they're up to 70. But there's still those 30 people before who are not going to get a job.
Right.
So the question is the economy doing well? That business is doing well, they've hired people, but you have the 30 people who are not doing well. So it's hard to answer what's happening.
Let me ask you a question, because we wrestle with this every time the unemployment numbers come out and we show those on air and we see increases, decreases here and there. From a national standpoint, when you look at unemployment in the 6% range, there are those out there, those economists, those who are the insiders, if you will, who say it's not a good read. They've said that for years. It's not a good read because there is still a huge percentage looking for work, not finding work. Right. Is that an accurate statement, you think?
That's a very accurate statement, because the unemployment number that we look at are just people who is unemployed. That means you have to be looking for at least 4 weeks. You have to be actively looking. Then you have divided by labor force, but there's a lot of people not including the labor force. The other thing is there's people who are employed, but termed underemployed. Yeah. So they're working part-time. They're not working as much as they want. They're not getting paid as much as they want. So the number that we actually get is a very limited number.
So is it wrong for us in the media to look at these, and when we see upticks as far as it goes from 6.7 to 6.1% or 5.8%, when we see that down or up, depending on how you phrase it, but is it wrong for us to see that as being a positive note on the economy?
I think when it comes to the unemployment numbers, you can't just look at one number. You have to look at a bunch of numbers. You say, okay, this is what happened to unemployment. What happened to labor force participation? Because there's been a big drop of that because of the aging of the population. What's happening with, you look at payroll numbers, or you look at the household survey or establishment survey. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you have to look at a lot of different numbers, employment to population ratios. There's a lot of numbers when it comes into talking about the labor market that we need to look at to get a better picture of what's happening.
We're in a midterm election year. We've got the holidays right around the corner, which is hard to believe. But what's your read from an economist looking at what we're headed to and what 2015 could hold?
I see more of the same. Slow growth, unemployment ticking down, but not much change. And so it's just going to be, it's almost like going on a roller coaster ride. When you're going up, you go up really slow, and then it may pick up. But
the stock market's been up, though. I mean, that's the one that just confuses everybody.
But that's just like the top 20% doing well. That's not,
that's a good point.
Because most people who have their money in the stock market, most businesses, they're the top 20%. So the stock market doing well is not a good gauge of how the broader economy is doing well.
It's just a bigger picture of the haves and the have-nots, you're saying? Or is that too extreme to look at it that way?
That's too extreme.
Okay.
It gives us an idea of how businesses are doing business confidence. You can look at stock market's business confidence, and then consumer confidence tells us how individuals are doing. So it's a piece of the puzzle.
I want to point out another piece, and I want to get your reaction to it. One of those economists out there, one of those insiders, he said, while we may hear reports of rising home prices, decreasing unemployment, and rising wages, a closer examination reveals that most of the benefits of the recovery goes to the highest income earners. Where have we heard that? And leaving most Americans off the table. So you subscribe to that, as he is pointing out. So you're not alone in that theory.
No, and a lot of times, anytime there's a recovery, it's always going to come back to the top. And then the key is, well, what's happening with the rest, and what sort of policies are being implemented to help individuals out.
Do you see any change? I mean, you said 2015, and then we start getting into considering who our next president is going to be. But you don't see any. You see us staying status quo.
I do, because there's so many. The problem with these recoveries is that, like the analogy I gave before, there's those 30 people. How do we help those 30 people out? And those 30 people, those jobs are never coming back.
Could we be setting ourselves up for another kick in the pants, if you will?
I wouldn't see that.
Yeah. Barring any type of major event around the globe.
I mean, the biggest thing is that the Fed is one who really has a kind of good read on the economy. And they understand that unemployment is still an issue. That even though wages are going up, stock market's going up, individuals are still hurting, and they're still implementing policies to make sure that the economy is still running smoothly. So as long as the Fed continues focusing on unemployment, I'm going to see and expect more of the same.
Binga, good luck to you the rest of this semester over at UT, and thanks as always.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back right after this. A fun finish for this roundtable.